Hello and welcome to my channel here, Mothchild Cosplay and Creations. Today we're going to be working on the Sakuratide armor from Monster Hunter Wilds. This game came back out in, January, February? I didn't get to log on and play until the end of April. The second that I logged on though, and I saw the Sakuratide event armor, oh my gosh, I was so in love. Everything, the traditional Japanese inspiration, the pinks, the golds, and the blacks, everything about this armor touched my heart in a way that an armor or costume design has not touched it in a very, very long time. This is shaping up to be the first costume that I actually finish since 2022. October of 2022 for TwitchCon, that's the last time that I actually finished something. So this is really exciting. This is a big deal. But yes, today this is just going to be all of the sewn elements of this armor. There are a bunch of little doodads and accessories and actual armor pieces that we'll be focusing on in the next video, which isn't the one for September or October. Oh shit, it's September now, isn't it? Which isn't the one for October, but the one for November. Hopefully we'll be there at that point. We got a lot of stuff going on. Next video will be a little side quest that we're taking on. I am so excited. You can see part of that in the background behind me. Shh, that's also why everything's kind of a mess here, but it feels so good to be working on a project again and to feel passionate about making something. Oh my goodness, I am over the moon with how well this has all been shaping up. I'm so excited to share this with you guys, and thank you for joining me on this little journey. We're going to get right on into it, starting with the hakama today.
So we're starting out by putting together this pattern that I got from Etsy for a pair of hakama, which are a traditional Japanese style of pants. I'm not linking this pattern because I really actually didn't like it, but I am still mentioning it because I didn't make this pattern. But the real star of the show here on these pants is this beautiful linen that I got from, I think Fabric Wholesale Direct is the website. It has a really nice drape, and I knew going into this that linen would be a great choice because the texture is incredible, and the way that linen handles being ironed into crisp pleats, like something necessary for the hakama, is otherworldly. So pretty quickly, these instructions left much to be desired. Immediately, I'm here working on these back panels, and I don't think I made them. And what is this? I don't know what this is. I could not find this in the video. I didn't understand what the heck was happening, so I just kind of made it up. I hope I did it right, but I have literally no idea. And unfortunately, because I only speak one language, the person that I got this pattern from spoke a different language. And so I had subtitles on while watching her video, and the subtitles weren't clear either. And it was just a struggle. I was so happy to just try to get to pleating. And even then, the pleating on the pattern didn't really make sense to me. And I ended up just kind of fucking it up and figuring it out along the way as we went. And yes, you did just see me utilize my head to hold down a pleat. I did that a lot because this is a lot of fabric and I have two hands. I don't have enough hands to hold all this fabric down. Anyway, I took it over to my ironing board and I ironed all of the pleats flat, and this is where you can really see linen shine. This is so crispy and beautiful, and I am obsessed with it. I hope you guys also enjoy all the footage that I've got of different angles of me at my sewing machine. When I started putting this video together and rewatching it, I kind of at some point said to myself, Haley, why did you record this? Do you need all this footage of you at your sewing machine? Do they really need to see that you're at your sewing machine? They should know that you're sewing. And I determined that yes, actually, you guys don't believe that I'm actually sewing and doing these things. So to prove it to you, I have faceless shots of me and definitely not a body double at my sewing machine. Anyway, we're doing flat felt seams here. If you're not familiar with what a flat felt seam is, it's the type of seam that you'll see on the inside of the legs of your jeans. You sew up your seam, you iron your seam open, you trim one side of your seam allowance down to usually about 1/4 inch or just as close as you can comfortably get to the actual seam itself, and then you take the other side and press and roll it, encasing that trimmed seam allowance inside. Then you take it to your sewing machine and you stitch it down. Once my legs were all stitched up and flat felt, we could move on to adding this waistband. So this part of the waistband just encases the front panels of the hakama, and it's long enough to wrap around me and tie again at the front. Because I spent all that time making these pretty pleats, I used hella pins to hold them in place while I sewed on my waistband, because I would be incredibly sad. Sad beyond words. A sadness that you could not comprehend if I had sewn this waistband on and then they had moved or shifted. So the name of the game with this design is texture. I had a lot of fun playing with different stitched textures on all of these garments, and I'm including some textures on the hakama in a way that nobody but me will know about by stitching lines and lines of stitching on the ties for the waistbands. I also added some little loops for the back to hold the tie in place on the back of the hakama, and I added texture to that too. And reviewing this footage, I sit here and I ask myself, Haley, why did you waste time on this? Why? You could have finished this weeks ago if you didn't spend hours working on these stupid details that nobody but you and the viewers of this video will see. Here's a clip of me sewing the aforementioned belt loops onto the back of the back waistband thing for the hakama. I have to be so honest here and remind everybody that this is a costume. This is not traditional garb. It is inspired by traditional garb. I did not use traditional techniques for making this. Please don't come for me. After everything was on and I pulled my pants up and gave them a little tie and saw how they fit, I determined how big my hem could be, and we began pinning it as such. I think I went with a 1/2-inch hem, double rolled. That's just pretty standard for me. And yes, here is definitely me and not a body double at my sewing machine, sewing away fearlessly like the fearless leader that I am. Behold, a hem being applied to a pair of pants. Have I talked about how important ironing is yet? Or has my body double shown you how important ironing is yet? Because you're about to see. This is after I handled these pants and got the hem on and everything. I was about ready to apply my iron-on vinyls that you'll see in a bit here. And I realized, ooh, bitch, you're wrinkly. You need to get pressed. But in a good way, not like the, oh, she's so pressed way. It's time for the iron-on vinyl. For the hakama, this is like the show-stopping detail that really makes this something incredibly unique. Iron-on vinyl, I don't use it a whole lot. I think that in some applications it can look kind of cheap. So I am particular about the vinyl that I use, and when I use it, this was the kind of costume and design that necessitated the use. The design in the game has such a beautiful reflective shine that I knew embroidery or stenciling and painting just could not do. It couldn't recreate. So the only thing that would really get me that look that I wanted was iron-on vinyl. And added bonus, iron-on vinyl is pretty friggin' fast. So I was able to get a lot done much faster than I would have by embroidering or sewing on trim or painting this by hand. I also used my Cricut to cut out a bunch of cherry blossom little decals that you can see here, and I was able to apply those the same way. One big thing whenever you're applying a bunch of iron-on vinyl, set your iron on it and fucking take your hands off. It is the most terrifying thing. I hate this about both stabilizers and iron-on adhesives generally, but especially iron-on vinyl. It freaks me out, and I'm always so terrified that I am going to burn my fabric. Here are the finished hakama. Look at that shine. Oh my god, every time that I see this video, I get so excited. These turned out so friggin' beautiful. Also, along the way, we realized that the lighting in my craft room was absolutely dog shit. So I ordered these ceiling lights from Amazon for like 60 bucks, and it has improved my workspace so much. Oh my god. I don't understand why apartments don't believe in overhead lights, but alas, my issue was solved. Moving on to things that actually matter, that are not lighting in a craft room, we have the quote-unquote obi. This is not a traditional obi. I want to make that so clear. I'm calling it an obi only because this is a traditionally Japanese-inspired design, but nothing about it is actually traditional, right? This pattern I actually got from the same person that I got the Hakama pattern from. And while I didn't need to use the instructions on this one because it's pretty straightforward, the sizing was really weird and this did not fit me at all. So we're not gonna link this one either, but I once again used that black linen and cut all of my pieces out. You guys have seen me do something like this before when working on corsets. Whenever I have patterns that have a lot of pieces, I like to lay everything out and start pinning it with it all in order. So like the left side will line up and move to the center back, which will then line up and move on to the right side. It helps me keep everything lined up and I know exactly what's going where and what needs to be pinned where. And otherwise I will lose track of what is up and what is down and what is left or right. Lord knows I have the directional sense of a bovine as it is. I cannot be doing that while we're trying to sew. Same as before, I put everything together, I stitched it all up. Now this, what really makes this different than a traditional obi is number one, a traditional obi is typically a really long rectangle of fabric that gets wrapped and then ornately tied around either the front or the back of the body, depending on if you're a geisha and what your rank is, or if you're just wearing a kimono, whatever. I don't know the specifics. I don't want to get into it. This is obviously not a long rectangle of fabric. This actually, I boned it. You'll see, I lined it. I made basically 2 of these and pillowcase lined it and installed boning inside to make sure that it would stay upright, stiff, and it would kind of give me a little bit of waist. And a fear that I had with this design, as beautiful as it is that there are so many layers and there is so much happening that I was afraid that I would lose my waistline. I am a costumer who loves a nice defined waist. It makes me feel very feminine and beautiful, and I find it to be very flattering on my body. I didn't really want to look like a column straight up and down. Those days were my middle school emo kid days when I was incredibly thin and wore skinny jeans and oversized t-shirts and I wanted to look like a little ruler. And we're not about that anymore, you know? So I made choices and small changes to the design to accommodate my desires for a snatched little feminine waist, all right? And you can do the same. Make things comfortable for you. I am going to give you a warning, a little jump scare heads up that the next clip is not from the finished obi. I had to remake this quote-unquote obi twice. And the first time, it turned out really beautiful. I loved the way it fit. It was the right size. However, as you can fucking see here, and I'm so mad that I didn't see it when I was applying this boundary, border, that's the word I was looking for, this iron on vinyl border, it was too thick. And I kind of in the back of my head was like, maybe it's a little thick, but it'll work. But alas, I completed this garment, I applied my iron on vinyl, and then after putting it on with my Hakama, I said, oh my God, I fucked up. This is wrong. And I went to take the iron on vinyl off and the adhesive remained. It didn't look good. So this was an entire day's worth of work lost. At this point, I'm literally thinking to myself, oh fuck. Let's see if you can see the look of disappointment on my face. This is me throwing it over. Can you see it? Can you see the sadness? You see me staring? I'm trying to convince myself at this point that everything is fine. I forgot that I added it all the way around. Oh my God. I worked on this like 2 months ago, maybe 3 at this point. It's been a while, so it's always fun getting to rewatch clips. It's like I'm watching this video with you for the first time. Look, yeah, okay, this must be it, where I really look and I'm like, oh God, is it there? Where's the moment? I've got it over my sweatshirt. That's me walking away to ask Casey if it looks bad, and he goes, yes, it does. Also, this pink belt, I dyed this fabric pink. It was the white linen that you are going to see later on. It's incredibly long, and I put even more texture on this. I didn't record any of it because I thought to myself, it's a strip of fabric. Who cares about a strip of fabric? I'm sure somebody will, though. The final little detail piece for this obi, now that we have the main black portion and the pink belt completed, is this itty bitty little gray piece that you barely see. You see it literally just around the front. If you look super, super closely zoomed in, you'll see where there's like a gray little belt underneath the outer layer of the obi, and that's what we're working on now. This is just a rectangle of fabric that I stitched 2 of them together. I'm so sorry. This is gonna give me motion sickness. Ugh, I cannot put my camera on my ironing board again, but I'm very sorry. I didn't realize that mistake until well after this video was recorded. I apologize to those like me who get sick from the motion of the ocean. Once I had my little pillow of gray linen put together, I began decorating it because at this point I had kind of given it all to the texture. I did the pink belt, right? And I got through that and I said, oh, thank God I don't have to do that ever again. And then I realized that if I wanted things to be consistent in textures, in design themes, I would have to. Oh, here's the inside of that obi. Yeah, it looks really ugly. The second time that I made it, I was running out of fabric. Anyway, there's where the little gray belt goes. You can see I pinned it in to know where to stitch it. Then I hand stitched it down, as you can see here. And here's how this thing closes, because there's like 3 layers right here. So, all right, a little video, perfect. This little gray part goes into these hooks under the other side of the obi. And then there's a little snap right there on the center front, and that snaps. And we're looking pretty good there, aren't we? I mean, that looks, oh shit. God damn it, we got this pink belt right here. We gotta wrap around me. This thing goes around me like 3 times. And also, I don't know what happened there. I'm very sorry. Once this belt wraps around me, and are we going to, is this again? Oh, okay, here we go. Once the belt wraps around me, I sewed little pant trouser hook and eyes, the little bars. I think those are so much more secure than the standard hook and eyes. And then it just kind of hooks in right there. I initially wasn't on board with this and I really had to talk myself into liking it, but now I'm convinced that it's the best way this could have closed and that nobody will see where that closure is because my arms and my sleeves will be in the way most of the time anyway. But look at the back. I added that little V at the back because I thought it would be very flattering, and I like the nice little upturn on the side and then the point at the front, and it looks really good. This panel for the skirt, oh my God. This is what made me want to make this design in the very beginning. I saw this and I fell in love. But here's the thing. In game, hi Bale, thank you for sniffing the camera. Please don't knock it over. Okay, you're about to get moved, I think. In the game, the design on the skirt panel is not the Mizutsune. We believe, I asked a few different friends who all play Monster Hunter, that it's the Hirabami, not the Mizutsune. So we're doing that instead. I worked with a coworker of mine who drew up this stylized Mizutsune for me. I am so grateful. I keep asking her to give me her Twitch information. Bale was not impressed by the cricket, by the way. He hated it. He was kind of scared of it, did not want to be near it. So I could share her like socials and stuff because she wouldn't let me pay her. I asked, please let me pay you. And she goes, no, thank you. I don't want your money. It's no good here. We don't accept money from thieves. And I said, you can't prove that I stole anything except for your heart. And she said, I know, but you did steal it, so I can't accept your money. Anyway, we worked together on this design and I brought it over to my Cricut that I then, after, it took me like 3 days fighting with the Cricut. I hate the Cricut software so much. It never does what I want it to do. And it's like my least favorite digital creating software. But once I had it, I was able to use it to cut out all of my heat transfer vinyl, which by the way, if you want this stuff, it's gonna be linked in my Amazon storefront. If you want to support me as a creator and you want to make your own, you could consider buying from my Amazon storefront. Not sponsored. Is that sponsored? I mean, I guess I kind of make commission, but I don't think that, like, they're not paying me to say, hey, you should buy from my Amazon storefront. Also, look at me fight with this sticky cover. Oh my God. This is my least favorite part of weeding any sort of iron-on vinyl, is like when you pull it off and you reveal the sticky underside of the like plastic cover, and you have to keep it from rolling on itself. Oh, absolutely horrific. It made it take so much longer than it needed to. This whole process was also something that I hadn't done before, where I needed to do 2 different colors of vinyl on the same area to create a design. I know all of the Etsy moms and the people that have Cricuts that make t-shirts and stuff, they do this. So I figured if a mom can do it, I can do it. So I weeded it all out, and I started with the pink because there was less of the pink. And I don't know, it just made sense to me to start with this. And it's the same thing that I mentioned before, where I put my iron down and you can see me stressing. Like, I have to tell myself, hands off the iron, let it sit. Your fabric will not burn. And then we move on. Obviously, I didn't move on that much though, because I got too antsy and I decided surely if I move the iron around, but we leave it technically on the fabric for a little bit longer, it'll be the same as if I just let the iron apply pressure in one spot over 10 seconds. So I did that for a while too, but this took me a long time to lay down. I mean, this is in real time. You can see I drew out my seam allowance on both sides so I would know where the bounds of my design were. And I just really had to be careful with making sure everything was lined up. I mean, there's a few different parts where the pinks and the golds like touch. You know, if you look over to that left side, if there's a little gap there, it's going to be noticeable. And I try to tell myself like, oh, 5 foot rule, 5 foot rule, 5 foot rule. But like, god damn, dude, I'm 5 inches from this thing. I can see it. Therefore, it's unacceptable. That's how the 5 foot rule works, right? It's not about if you can see it from 5 feet away. It's about me seeing it from 5 inches away and crying about it late at night. Eventually, though, I was happy with the placement and I started ironing it on. So I was like really, really, really nervous about potentially overheating the pink and then it like bubbling or warping, because iron-on vinyl will do that. If you let the iron sit for too long, it can bubble and warp, and that's especially evident with these like shimmery, shiny, metallic vinyls. But it's all good because it all worked out in the end. And here's a video of me removing this plastic. This always freaks me out too. I go super slow as I peel it off. I'm afraid that I'm gonna remove the design. And then here's the Mizusune. Ugh. I had to cut this out in, I believe, 3 different sections because it was just too large for my Cricut to handle at once. And that was actually what I fought with the most with the Cricut design software, because it kept wanting to take all these individual pieces and like separate them and make it to where they could be cut out all on one sheet. But I didn't want that because I wanted the piece to stay together. I didn't want to Jenga Tetris puzzle this piece of shit back together. Anyway, with the iron-on vinyl all applied and looking beautiful, I then added on my lining. And this is, oh, I love things inspired by traditional Japanese clothing because it's straight lines and it's squares and rectangles, and that makes life so easy. So once I had my little rectangle pinned together, I went and I sewed it up. I did some top stitching along the edges just to make sure that everything would stay nice and flat, and then I needed to make a little waistband. So the way that this stays on is it literally wraps around my waist, and it has a tiny little waistband that has a little snap button that keeps it in place. So the top is kimono inspired. It is not a kimono top. The sleeves are so different, and even the designs like the way that the front is cut, it just resembles a kimono. What is happening? Roomba, no! Oh my god, so sorry. My Roomba started up in the middle of me recording this voiceover. Didn't like that. Anyway, so because it's just inspired and I knew that I wanted a specific sleeve shape, I actually took a McCall's pattern for a princess seamed bodice and I laid it out flat to get the design for the top. Does that make any sense at all? I will say, unfortunately for you guys, because I have been sewing for almost a decade now, a lot of this is very intuitive and I can't fully explain why I make some of the choices that I make. All I know is that they work. But this is the gray under piece. There's 2 layers to this top. There's a white and then there's a gray. And I had to make sure that the neckline would be wide enough to accommodate the 2-inch wide collar that we're doing, and it did. So then we moved on to cutting out my white pieces. With the white parts, I actually made sure that they were a little bit narrower than the gray, so that way the gray would peek through whenever I had both layers on. And I cut out twice as many as I needed for the main body because this fabric can be a little thin, and I wanted to make sure that the gray wouldn't poke through. With all of my white pattern pieces cut out, I was then able to dye them and give them this beautiful ombre pink. I will say my ombre is a lot more intense than the one in the game, but I think it's fine. It really works for me. Once that was accomplished, I could then start stitching up the sides. Once again, these seams on this top have flat felt seams. I am a really big proponent of like continuing a detail through a build. So once I had the flat felt seams on the hakama pants, I wanted to include those on the quote unquote kimono top as well. As a reminder, if you forgot from the 20 minutes ago when we first talked about flat felt seams, you take your seam, stitch it up normally, press it open, trim one side of the seam allowance down, iron the other side over, and then you very carefully fold that longer seam allowance over and under to encase the short seam allowance inside. You take it over to your sewing machine and you stitch that little flap down. It just kind of reinforces the seam and makes sure that any raw edges are not visible. Also, dude, I haven't really talked about him a whole lot, but this is our newest member of the family. His name is Bale, like from Elden Ring, like, curse you, Bale! The phrase curse you, Bale is said unironically very often around this house. And here I go, stitching down my little flat felt seam. I just wanted to make sure that you guys kind of saw this because it's a really nice seam finish, especially on heavier fabrics like denim, and in this case linen. It's really overkill for this, but like I said, because I used this design element on the pants, I wanted to include it on the top as well. With the main construction of the body finished, it was time to start my collars. The collars are really simple. They are just really long rectangles of fabric, and I used interfacing, which you can see me measuring and cutting out here, to make them stiffer and stand up the way that they needed to stand up for this project. This clip right here, this is real time. I wanted to leave this in here because I really wanted to make sure that it was understood how tedious and long some of these processes are. This is me making the design for the white collar, that rectangular diamond and heart design, drawing out my pieces of interfacings like the links that I needed, and then creating like little squares so I would know exactly how wide I wanted my pieces. And then I had to accommodate for seam allowance. I had to accommodate for how wide my stitches are going to be when I start doing the diamonds. And then I had to, it's a whole process. And I sometimes feel like these things get really overlooked because all that a lot of people see at the very end is the shiny costume and the pretty photo shoot. And it becomes invisible how much hard work, time, and dedication actually goes into creating a costume. Even a simple one like this. I consider this to be a simple costume. The sewing is not intensive. Nothing about this design is super over the top or crazy, but taking the time to create and draw out these things is what really makes something next level. And it's the stuff like this that just really takes the time that people just forget to accommodate for. I mean, shit, dude, I thought I would be able to finish this costume in a month. It's now been 3.5 months and I'm maybe halfway done. All of the sewn elements are done, but I have props that I have to make. I used tearaway interfacing for this design, and I used some basting spray to spray it on. That way it would stay in place while I sewed it all down. And my seam matching on this, ooh, so good. After my design was added to that collar piece, I guess is the best way to put it, it was time to start actually stitching it on. This process, this took forever. This is about the time where I really began regretting my dedication to texture and trying to make everything like pop a little bit more. This is a detail that nobody's really going to notice or care about, but it really stood out to me whenever I was working on this. This is a real-time video of me stitching down a line. I just, once again, wanted to show like this does not happen in the way that a time lapse makes it seem like it happens, in the way that a video makes it seem like it happens. Also, pro tip, if you're doing anything like this and you need to pivot, put your needle on the outside of the design. So that way, when you rotate back to continue your line, you will not have a gap. If your needle is on the inside of the design, whenever you rotate, you will have a little gap where your lines of stitching do not overlap. This collar also has little red detailing along the top and the bottom, so I just used some red twill tape that I found on Amazon and stitched that into my seam. And when it came time to apply the collar to the top, I only sewed the backside of the collar to the top by machine. I then went and folded the other side in and stitched that down by hand. I did the same thing for my gray top, which I then decided needed more texture. So I began stitching and stitching and stitching. And I put these little hearts on the gray collar to match with the hearts that got stitched on the white collar in the dead spaces. Super cute. I definitely love the way it looked. And then it was time to sew on my sleeves. My sleeves, not really shown here. I took the sleeve pattern from the pattern that I used to make the basic shape for the top and used that to make the sleeves. The bottom is tight, so I took my measurements from my wrist to my elbow and made a little slapdash pattern and stitched those up out of the great linen, included seam allowance, etc., etc. Standard stuff. Oh, there you are, Bale, you sweet little child. Get away from me. You messed me up. He's so handsome, though, and he's so soft. Such a soft little kitty cat. When it came time to actually attach the poofy sleeves to the little arms, I actually basically did cartridge pleats and whip stitched them all into place. Whenever you have something really, really bulky, like this sleeve going out of something really, really small, cartridge pleat is the way to go. There's a reason that it was done historically for large ball gowns, and that's why I'm gonna do it on my sleeve. And behold, my whip stitching. I love hand sewing. I find it to be very, very calming. And that's also why all of the little flowers that you saw on the sleeve were sewn on by hand with little gold beads in the center. And if you look in the background, my camera doesn't want to focus on my hands. You can see a stuffed coyote. Oh, so cool. And with the addition of the sleeves, this costume, or at least the sewing portions, is completed. I love the way that this turned out. I think it's frankly stunning. Good job, me. And look at that with the Mizu plate. Are you kidding? Match made in heaven or hell if you're a monster and I'm on my way to hunt you. Better look out, because look at my sick ass glaive spinning skills. And then I have the insect glaive. I made both of those previously, the insect and the insect glaive, for a previous costume that never got completed. Oops, and it glows. Ugh, I'm in love. This is it. This is peak. Look at, and the way the light shines off the, are you kidding? It's beautiful. Goodbye.